Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar, Ecomaine Craft Along for Kids. My name is Andrea Chim, and I am the Communications and Events Coordinator at the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We are very excited to partner with Ecomaine and offer you fun and creative activities you can do right from your home. Before we jump into the program, there are a few housekeeping details. Guests are welcome to submit questions into the chat function on the right-hand side of the YouTube screen by logging into your YouTube or Google account, or by sending them directly to Ecomaine at info@ecomaine.org. With that, I'll turn things over to Katrina to begin the program.
Hi friends, how are you today? My name is Katrina. I work for Ecomaine, and if you don't know who Ecomaine is, we take trash and recycling from around a third of Maine's population. So we take recycling and we sort it out and we send it off to fun places for them to turn things into new things. And we actually take trash and burn it in a really neat way. And we combust it for electricity, meaning we turn your trash into electricity. But today we wanted to bring you some really fun crafts that you could do at home on this rainy day, or if you're stuck inside. And we're gonna start with what we call a weaving craft. So it can look something like this, but remember that this is your craft, so you're gonna use whatever you can find and make a really fun thing. So I'm gonna tilt my screen down and show you what I've got here. So in order to do this craft, you're just gonna need a piece of cardboard. It could be from an old shoe box, an old box you got in the mail, even a cereal box will do. So all you need is a piece of cardboard. You see I've cut some small notches in the side. You want to do that, and you just need a pair of scissors for that. Make sure you're being safe with those. And when you use those scissors, you don't want to make huge notches and cut all the way down like halfway. You just want to make little tiny ones. So I did 6 on each side, and you can do as many as you want, but I recommend doing at least 4, because if you do say 2 notches, then it's harder to weave things. Now, in order to do the weaving, you're going to need something like string or yarn. If you have anything like sewing thread, that's okay. Even floss will do, or even some thicker or thinner yarn or ribbon. So anything will do, whatever you have laying around the house. And what you'll do is you'll take that string or yarn and you'll put one side on the side that you don't want to weave through. So see how I have a long tail on there? If I have a really, really short tail, then it might come out while I'm weaving. So I like a long tail, and then I just wrap it around and around and around until I get to the other end. Have someone help you do this if you want to. So see, I've got it all the way done, and then when I'm done here, I want another tail. So again, it doesn't come right off. So now I have my weaving base ready to go. You could do it on this side or on this side, but this is going to be a better side because you've got the tails on that side. Now, I also have some colorful paper here. You can use anything at home. You can use old junk mail. This was an envelope that I just cut into nice small strips. If you have an old calendar, that's great too. And then you can also use some really fun nature pieces. In my front yard, there's a bush and it's got these neat little pieces with needles on it. So I'm going to use those. And then there's also a willow tree on my street. And so they've got some kind of yellow branches like this. So I'm going to use a little bit of everything. You can use all nature, you can use all paper, you can use anything you want because this is your craft. Now here comes the fun part. You're going to pick something, anything you want, and you're going to start weaving. And the way you do that is you go under and then over and then under and then over. So you're going under one string and over the next, under one string and over the next. You can kind of push that down and you're ready for the next one. And on this time, you're going to go the opposite way. So see, last time I went under first, I'm going to go over first. So I'll do over and then under, over and then under until I'm done. And you push that guy down. And then I'm going to try one of my cool spiky things. Now, if you're going to use something like this, it's a lot harder if you go in like this because then all the needles will kind of back up and fall off. But if you go in this way, then all the needles will go the right way. So this time I'm going to go under and then over and then under and then over, and so on. And push that guy down. And I'll grab another piece of paper. Let's go yellow. And this time I go over and then under and over and under and over and under. And you'll get a lot faster at this the more you do it. So I'll go quickly here. And on and on and on. So if you have any questions about how we're doing it, or what materials you can use, or why I did something one way or another, you can always ask them in the Q&A, or you can reach out to us by info@ecomaine.org. That's a good email address to send any questions to. And so I'm almost done here. I'll do one more. Let's go with blue. Now, if you find that you are done with your weaving craft and you still have a lot more materials and you want to keep going, then you could even go under, over this way with all your different materials too. So you could do like a cross hatch weaving, which would be really cool. But remember that it's your craft. It can look like anything that you want it to. If you don't like stuff hanging over, you could even cut it down so it's all one length. But if you like it hanging off like I do, that's great too. So you can do it however you want. So I hope you had fun with that. And of course, all you need is some cardboard, some string or yarn of some kind, some scissors, and then anything from nature to old paper laying around. And this could be anything from, you could even cut up old cereal boxes for this part too. So anything you want to use is great because it's your craft and you get to make it however you want. We have a lot of other fun videos at ecomaine.org/learn. So I hope you had fun with this one. And now we're going to take you over to Vanessa, who's going to make paper with you. So I hope you have fun.
All right, hi guys. It's hard to see me, but I really want you guys to focus on the blender and what I've got going on here on the table. So this activity, we're gonna make some recycled paper out of old paper that we've got lying around the house. So the first thing you're gonna need is you're gonna need some old paper, and you can find, you know, this is just like a little note. I can rip this up and use this. Or I can take an envelope that I got some junk mail in, I can rip that up. If you want to add some color, you've got a couple options there. You can either use construction paper. If you've got an old art project that you don't need anymore, you can rip up that construction paper and throw that in here. Or you can add food coloring, which is what I'm going to do today. So the first thing is we've got my blender here. This is off. Make sure you use have a grown-up's help when you're using the blender. If you're one of our younger friends, some of our older friends, like in middle school and high school, they might have used a blender before. So if you feel comfortable, it's good to have a grown-up's help, but when you're older, you might not need it as much. But for my little friends, there are some really sharp blades inside this blender. You can't really see them very well right now, but if I take this out, you can actually see the blades really, really well. Those are sharp and we really don't want to hurt your fingers. So you're going to keep that in mind when we're using the blenders. And we're going to add shredded paper first, and then we're going to add some of our other ingredients to make it more fun. So I'm going to take my measuring cup, and you can use any old cup in your house, or you can even use your hands if you want. I've got lots of shredded paper right here, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to take 2 giant scoops, and I'll show you what those look like. So there's 1 scoop, and that's going right into the blender. And then a second scoop, because that'll give me enough paper to make 2 sheets, which is pretty good. So there's my second scoop. And remember, you can use pretty big handfuls. Like this is a good size. Try it out, play with different, amounts and see what you get. I'll add in some of those little ripped pieces that I have over here. Those can go in there. My construction paper can go in there. And then I've got to add water next. So we'll get that paper right out of the way. I'm going to add a lot of water. You can use a measuring cup. You want a little bit more water than you do paper. I'm gonna use this since I have a pitcher at home. I'm gonna pour the water right into the blender this way. And you want that water to cover all of that shredded paper. Give it a nice bath. So once I have enough in here, you can kind of see the paper is swimming in it. There's a little bit more water than there is paper. So that's a good mix. And then with a grown-up's help, again, remember, I'm gonna snap this lid on, and you can use a different blender in your house. If you don't have a Ninja like we do with these really crazy blades, you can use any blender that you have at home. And then I'm gonna make sure this is on, it's on there nice and safe. And then with a grown-up's help, we can use the blenders. I'm just gonna pulse it so I can watch and make sure I'm paying attention. And then I'm gonna blend this right up. So when I'm ready in 3, 2, 1. Right. And that looks pretty good. We want it to kind of look like cold, soggy oatmeal, which doesn't sound very yummy, but that's the exact mix we want for our paper. And if we wanted to, I'm going to do this just for fun. I'm going to add a little bit of food coloring in here now. I think I want maybe some, let's do some green paper. So I'm going to take at least a few drops of food coloring, or I could rip up some construction paper and put that inside. And once I feel like I have just the right amount of color in there, I'm gonna put my lid back on, make sure that's on there nice and tight, and I'm gonna blend it up again. And once that's done, it's a really nice green color now. I'm gonna take that blade out to make sure I'm nice and safe, protect my fingers. And then I'm going to turn off that blender and turn off the surge protector too if you're using one of those at home. Not a really good glance at that. Let's see if I can get a better angle. So that's what we want it to look like, kind of like soggy oatmeal. And we're going to get our hands dirty with this activity. This is not one that you can, get away with not washing your hands at the end. So how I'm going to do this, I'll get some of this stuff out of the way to show you, is I've got some screens that I've made at home to make my paper. Now, this is something we can totally improvise. I have a couple different ones. I made these ones out of embroidery hoops. So I got those at a craft store for pretty cheap. And then I actually added some tutu skirt, some leftover tutu skirt or tulle. And this one, you can kind of see the extra. But I just put that into the embroidery hoop. And that's a pretty easy way to do it if you've got some of those lying around. Or we've got some really, really heavy duty screens. This one's got a wooden frame and a metal screen inside. We can actually take a screen out of our window and borrow it for a little while if we wanted to make paper that way. So you can be really creative with making your screens. You just want something where when you put that pulp on, I'm going to do that now to show you. You want something where that water is going to come out of the bottom. You can see it kind of seeping through the screen. We want nice dry paper when we're all done, not soggy wet paper. And you can see here, I put my pulp, my paper pulp with the paper and the water on top in that little square right over the screen. And then I'm gonna hold the bottom really, really sturdy with one hand, kind of like I'm holding a pizza. And then one hand on top is gonna squish out all that water. So we want nice dry paper. We're gonna do this for just a minute or so and push out all of that water. And I'm lifting really, really carefully because what happens with the paper is wet is you can really easily rip it. So I'm gonna kind of like curve my hand when I pick it up. You can kind of see the finger indents in there, but I'm doing it really, really slowly so I don't rip my paper. And once this is really dry, once there's no water coming out of the bottom, if you can kind of see, there's not a few droplets. So I'm not quite done. Once I've squished out all that water and I've got pretty dry paper, I'm going to need this to dry for probably another 24 hours or so until it's ready to use. And so how I'm going to do that, if I want to reuse my screen, I'm going to need a different place for this to dry. So over here, I've saved some old cardboard. I cut up a cardboard box. You can also use a couple sheets of paper and put your paper on that to dry. And how this is going to work is I'm just going to take that over the screen and I'm gonna flip it and get that paper right onto that cardboard. And there's my paper all nice and done. We're gonna let that dry for at least a day, and then you'll know and kind of feel the difference once that moisture is gone. We can smooth it out a little bit now while it's flat here on the cardboard. We can also try to like shape the edges and make them nice and clean. And we can also trim them with scissors once they're dry. So that's what that looks like. We can do it again with the other screen, just kind of see what that looks like too. That one will make a circular screen, make a circle piece of paper. It's a little cold, that cold water. I've tried it with warm water and it seems to work just the same, but it feels a little bit nicer on a cold day. So we push out all that water and do the same process for this one, and we'll put it on a piece of cardboard when it's done. And then I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll just keep pushing out that water, get it nice and dry. And then they're gonna go on that sheet of cardboard to dry for a little while. This is halfway done. This is almost ready. And then our dry pieces of paper, these ones are green and blue-ish, and these are done. These are ready to go. I took those right off the cardboard this morning. And we can cut around the edges. We can turn it into the shape of a heart. We can be really creative with what we want to do with this paper. We can paint on it. We can use markers or different colors and make handmade cards or other things with our paper too once they're done. All right. And now that we've made our paper, I'm going to turn it over to Lena to make some bird feeders.
Hi everyone. So I have some old milk jugs here, but you can also use any sort of plastic or cardboard paper container. So I wouldn't use something that's made to hold like anything that's dry, so cereal or crackers. I wouldn't use that kind of box, but I would use a milk jug or a juice carton. Anything that's meant to hold liquids would be good and would be pretty sturdy for outside. So this is going to be our final product. You can see that I've kind of designed it here. We have a string to hold it onto a branch outside and then a little perch for the birds to grab some food from. So I'm going to use a smaller one over here. So for our younger friends, you might want to have your parents or an adult help you out with this stage. So you're either going to use scissors, or I also have a knife here to cut the holes into the sides of the milk jug. You can make squares, you can make circles, any sort of hole is fine. You want to make sure that you get the labels off of here too. If you're having trouble getting the labels off of your container, you can take a wet, like a damp towel, and hold it onto the container for a little bit, which should help the adhesive to the sticker come off. Make sure your container's clean too, of course, before you use it. So you can do one side or you can do multiple different sides. I think I'm going to do two on this one. And you want to make sure when you're cutting your hole that you're leaving an inch or so of space here so that you can put the bird seed inside and you have enough there where you don't have to fill it up every day. So now that you have your holes cut out, you can go through and design it now, or you can design it after. You can use a Sharpie or a permanent marker. You can use paint. You can get really creative. You could even put like glue on tissue paper and make all sorts of designs. We all know that birds really love flowers and bright and shiny things. So feel free to do bright colors, whatever really makes you happy here. So you want to keep the cap. You want to make sure that you don't lose the cap, just to make sure that water doesn't get stuck in here, because if there's a lot of water that gets inside once it rains, it'll get so heavy that it might break off the branch that it's on. So you want to make sure that you keep the cap around handy. But we are going to take the scissors again and make another hole up here. You can also use a hot glue gun and hot glue your yarn or rope to the top here. but I am just going to stick this through the hole up here and make a nice big knot. And then do the other side, making another knot. And then putting the cap back on to make sure that no water gets inside. So another fun feature that you can add to these, down here in the space where there's still a container down at the bottom, you can put some other small holes and grab either like a dowel that you might have laying around, or a stick from roasting your marshmallows over a fire last year. If you have an old stick like that, you can cut the ends off, the sticky ends from the marshmallow, or you can just use a stick that you find outside. I picked one that has not many knots or branches. This one would be kind of hard to stick through, but you could still probably use it. You want to make sure that you'll be able to stick it through a smaller hole. So the holes that you make on the bottom here have to be pretty small because you don't want your bird seed to fall right through it. So it also depends what kind of bird seed you're going to put in here. So if you have bigger holes down here, you're definitely going to want to get bigger seeds like sunflower seeds. So make some holes here. You can, broke my stick a little bit here. Stick your stick right through. And remember that your stick doesn't have to be very big. It can be really small because birds only weigh a few grams. So if you were to hold them in your hand, you wouldn't even know that you're holding one. They're so light. So you don't need a big stick. Even a small twig is fine. And that way a bird can come and perch on here as it's going in for the bird seed. And like I said, you can feel free to design it in any way. And of course, because you're making them out of something that you would otherwise recycle, you can make a ton of these and have a tree or a spot in your yard where you have a ton of different designed and decorated bird feeders that you've made from things that otherwise would be going into your recycling bin, and fill them all up with bird seed and make a nice little area for the birds to come as they're migrating back, and make sure that it's a place that you can go and visit or watch from a window so you can see what kind of birds are out there and kind of start to get to know your neighborhood birds too. So that's all that I have for my craft here. I hope you had a fun time making one or all three of your crafts with us today. And don't forget that we're recording this video, so if you have any questions and you want to come back to it later, you can do that and rewatch it once you've gotten all your materials ready. And you can find more activities like this at ecomaine.org/learn as well. So thanks for coming, guys. I hope you guys had really fun and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Hi, everyone. We actually do have a couple questions. One is for Lena. For the milk jug sizes, do you recommend certain sizes, or they can be any size?
I have a gallon size jug here. You could even use like a bigger water jug as well. One that's bigger than a gallon. I mean, if you're able to make the holes big enough and able to get some seed in there, really anything can work.
Oh, great. And the other question was for Vanessa. For the paper, is there a certain time that folks will know that it's completely dry and ready to go? Or do you recommend a couple of hours or overnight? Or
I like to leave them overnight at least. It depends on the weather too. Sometimes when it's like really, really nice and sunny out, if you're doing this in the middle of a hot summer day, it could only be a couple hours before it is fully dry. And you'll know based on, you feel regular paper, it's going to feel a little bit more sturdy than regular paper, but it's going to be as dry. So you want to just make sure that there's no little pockets of moisture in there at all, because we don't want moisture because that can also make mold, and we don't want moldy paper. So we want to make sure it's perfectly dry before we use it. It could take a day. It could take a couple hours, and it really depends on, where you store it. A nice dry, warm area is gonna let this dry out faster. If it's a nice rainy day and you've got them outside to dry, you might have a harder time.
So they can dry directly in the sun.
Yeah, I've done it
Okay.
before. And like, you know, on a really hot summer day, it only takes a couple hours. Think about like drying a towel, you know, it's the same kind of deal.
Great. All right. And with that, I will close it up. Does you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
No, we're just so glad that you guys could join us, and thanks so much for listening in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to Katrina, Vanessa, and Lena for their wonderful crafts. Remember to stay up to date on all of the Chamber's virtual events by subscribing to the Chamber's email list and by following the Chamber across all social media platforms. A follow-up email will be provided to those who register, and a replay of this video will be made available to all of you later today. Thank you so much for joining us.